My name is Stephanie Hoaglin. As you said, I'm the Director of Organic Industrial Base Modernization at Army Materiel Command. What that means is the Army has 23 facilities called the Organic Industrial Base sites, and they do production and maintenance for all of our warfighters. The Army is also the manager for all of conventional ammunition, so we also provide ammo to all of the services. When I was really young, I took things very personally, and any of the work that I did was personal to me. So when things did not go as planned, I would get a little bit emotional and I would internalize it and I would blame myself for things not going as I thought they should have. And these individuals definitely helped me grow in my career and made me realize it's not about the personal piece.
Hey, let's welcome my guest, Stephanie Hoaglin, Director of Organic Industrial Base Modernization at U.S. Army Materiel Command. Welcome to the show and glad to have you on today.
Thank you. Good morning. I appreciate you inviting me on the show.
Absolutely. So usually I start with a story or a little introduction of my guest. So if you want to share who you are, what you do, and maybe even what you did in the past, please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Stephanie Hoaglin. As you said, I'm the Director of Organic Industrial Base Modernization at Army Materiel Command. What that means is the Army has 23 facilities called the Organic Industrial Base sites, and they do production and maintenance for all of our warfighters. The Army is also the manager for all of conventional ammunition, so we also provide ammo to all of the services. And so my role at Army Materiel Command, which we call AMC, is to make sure that we modernize our facilities, bring them up to 21st century standards, make sure that the infrastructure at these facilities can support emerging technologies like automation, data transfer, so that we can become more efficient and effective, use the taxpayer dollars efficiently to make sure that we're providing the best service we can to our warfighters. Army Materiel Command is in Huntsville, Alabama, so that's where I reside now. But I did start my Army career about 15 years ago in the Quad Cities in Rock Island, Illinois, and I worked at one of the installations, which is called the Joint Manufacturing and Technology Center. And when I worked there, I worked in a laboratory and I actually did quality assurance testing of some of the equipment that we produce for our warfighters. And so I would spend my time cutting up components that we manufactured to make sure that we made them as safely and efficiently as possible, and then work with the production shop floor to make sure that everything was operating well. So I've got a lot of experience within the OIB as well as executing this mission for the enterprise.
And one of the big topics I like to talk about on this podcast is leadership and leadership philosophy principles. Since you were your experience in different domains, different places, do you have a philosophy that you follow when it comes to leading your team and leading other people?
I do. I have had a really great opportunity within the Army. I grew. So I started at a very lower level as an action officer level and made my way through a couple different organizations, starting at an installation and then moving to what we call Life Cycle Management Command, which is between the headquarters where I am now and the installation where I started, and then being pulled up to the headquarters to execute this mission. Along the way, I've had a lot of opportunities to learn about leadership and various forms of leadership, and I think it's influenced my philosophy greatly. But really, the philosophy that I try to stick to is that the folks that I work with are more than just my peers at work. They're my family. And so I try to treat them very much as if that is the case. And I really like to get to know the people that I work with, spend as much time with them as possible, and allow them to help shape the future of our Army. And so I think I don't want to say it's necessarily transformative, but there's definitely an aspect of that in there. But I think just the transparency piece and the openness and letting other people kind of lead the way and help guide me to the appropriate end state is the approach that I like to take.
And how do you balance, when you lead, how do you balance motivating people versus enforcing what they need to do, and you're commending or saying what to do? How do you find this balance?
So I really like to find folks who have skill sets that are beneficial, not just to my team, but to the larger enterprise. And so I've worked over time to find those nuggets of things within people and tried to enhance them so that I can put them in positions to utilize those skills to further develop themselves. And then in many cases, give them a little bit of an extra push, maybe into some areas in which they aren't as well versed or proficient in, so that they have opportunities to grow as well. Because you always want to leave a place better than when you came. And you always need to set yourself up so that you can leave and someone else can take over for you. And so I really give my folks as many opportunities I can to succeed and to thrive and to grow, because leaders don't need to do it all, right? We've had a lot of experience, which has pushed us in many cases into the positions that we're in. And so we need to extend that same courtesy back to the folks who are going to come behind us. And I find it very beneficial to be able to give my folks things that maybe they aren't even aware that they're able to do, and then watch them succeed, and then watch them continue to take those initiatives on their own as they come to them in the future. And that's, I think, how we develop people to become leaders and then allow them to grow in their positions.
And talking about your story, um, and speaking with hundreds of my guests on the podcast, I've seen this pattern where in times of hardship, or if you face some roadblocks or uncertainty, these usually are the greatest opportunities to learn, to excel. So on your journey, what were some of the biggest roadblocks and lessons that they taught you, and what you can share with the public?
Sure. So I think one of the ones I learned young is that it's okay to go fast and to want things and share your ambitions, but you also need to take your time and smell the roses along the way. Because if you get to some of these higher positions too quickly, sometimes you may not have all of the tools you need to be successful in that position. And though you always want to take the road that you're on and make sure that you're getting to the place you want to go, you sometimes it's okay to take detours. One example would be when I was at the installation, I had made it to a supervisory position relatively young, and I had a lot to learn there. And luckily for me, I had a team that helped me to do really well. But in order for me to continue to progress, there was only a certain level within the installation I was going to be able to achieve. And so I actually had to switch organizations. And when I did that, I had to take a step backwards. And so I actually took, I don't want to call it a demotion, but it set me back a little bit in my career for two reasons. One, the title of the position was less than what I was currently acting at. But two, I had to go and establish completely new relationships and learn an entirely new enterprise. And so I am a very ambitious person. I know that about myself. And it was challenging for me to kind of get over that loss of the role that I had already accomplished at the previous organization. And so learning from that experience, I think you have to be able to adapt and then teach other people that it's okay to take some of those risks, but there's going to be things you need to learn as you take those risks as well, right? Because you're going to lose some of the relationships you have, and relationships help you to accomplish things. And so you're going to have to rebuild that trust with everybody that you're working with. So that was one of the things. I think also when you're leading through challenging environments, it's all about transparency, right? And teaching people that it's okay to not know all the answers, and that sometimes you need to work together to figure out what right looks like. And so as long as you're sharing what you know with people and teaching them that it's okay to not always feel totally confident in that situation, when you create less fear of the unknown, it's easier when you're going to get after something together, right? And so I think that was definitely something that I've been working with folks in this environment as the Army is going through some major transformations here. One of the things that we do is we meet weekly with folks so I can hear their perspective and make sure that they're feeling confident in the situation they're in, and I'm sharing with them all the things that I know so that we can all be on the same page and kind of work through this together.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of that time when you had to switch positions and then process everything, and I can imagine that that was, as you said, that was very challenging. How do you process everything fast, or how do you take your time to effectively, get back on track and make sure that you're doing the right things despite, the emotions that are happening in your head? Anything that you've learned about on the personal level, processing emotions and figuring out how to do the right things despite what's outside of your control now?
Yeah, so mentors are one of the greatest things I've had in my career. I've had wonderful opportunities to work with folks across the enterprise, to include folks within the installation, those here at AMC, and then even a couple folks up at Department of the Army. What that's done is allowed me to get perspective of different leaders and have conversations about challenges that they've faced in their career, and then apply those to my own challenges and learn from them. And the great thing about mentors is once you start being a mentee to someone, you learn how to become a mentor, and then you can transfer that knowledge to the future generation, which is a huge component of how the Army works, right? Is we need to build leaders for the future. And so I think the mentorship aspect of my personal journey has been absolutely huge. When I started at the installation, I was very, very young, in my early 20s, and I was taken under the wing of a couple of very senior employees who taught me some wonderful things. And they're still my friends to this day. They're folks that I've known for almost 20 years now, and we still check in with each other. But when I was really young, I took things very personally, and any of the work that I did was personal to me. So when things did not go as planned, I would get a little bit emotional and I would internalize it and I would blame myself for things not going uh, as I thought they should have. And these individuals definitely helped me grow in my career and made me realize it's not about the personal piece, though it is important because it just shows that you care, that you need to rely on the team, you need to know when to ask for help, and you need to look at the bigger picture and see how you're able to achieve that. And that's a lesson that I've carried with me throughout my entire career that I took from some of the first mentors that I had. And as I progressed up to the headquarters, I've had the opportunity to work with many more people and learn a lot more lessons. So I think it's an integral part of leadership development to make sure that you have access to those mentors, to know who to ask to work with, and then to take the things that you've learned and give them back to the others that you work with. I think it comes full circle. You need to be able to have that relationship and perform that mentor role as necessary.
And how can one find the right mentor or mentors? Because you have a lot of people who might agree to mentor you, but how do you know that this exact person will be a good mentor for?
And I think it's dependent on the person, it's dependent on what you're looking for, right? So I have mentors in both my personal life as well as my professional life, and I get different things from different folks. And I actually have multiple mentors in my professional life as well. And so you have to look for someone who embodies the behaviors and characteristics that you want to have for yourself, that you emulate, that you think that you want to emulate and share with the community. And so I look for mentors that do things that I think are challenging, and I watch them work through adversity. And then I have conversations with them about how they operate and how they view how I operate and how we can kind of align those things, what we can learn from each other. I think you can have a mentor that you only meet a few times and take away things from that, but I think the ones where you find yourself going back for them for advice more frequently are the ones that you're probably going to learn the most from. Obviously, you have more interactions with them, but I think ultimately you know that you are in the right relationship when there's a back and forth, right? And it's not just you going and having a conversation and them telling you, I think that sounds good. Why don't you do this? It's more of a dialogue between you and that individual, and you're learning things from each other, right? Because it really should be a two-way street. And not to say that one is better than the other, because you can definitely get things from both. But I think the right mentorships are those in which there is a good, solid relationship there, and you both learn from each other.
Hmm. Going back to something that you mentioned at the start of the show, a new technology adapting, and in your role, you have to obviously be aware of all of the new technology that comes out. We have AI rapidly growing, we have a bunch of other things. So, how do you adapt to such a fast pace of the new technological advancements, and how you use that, how you communicate this to your team, and how does that affect your day-to-day life?
So I'm really lucky in that I have a very diverse team of individuals. I've been able to pull them from all the corners of the Army, right? So I've got some folks from the industrial base that have come work for me, and then some folks who did logistics specifically, and some from industry as well. And I think the Army's relationship with industry is how we stay informed of all these emerging technologies, right? So the Army has a relationship with an organization called the Manufacturing Innovation Institutes. We call them the MIIs for short. And they are non-for-profit leaders in industry who have large consortia and that means that they've got a lot of tentacles out into industry, right? A lot of small businesses. And so they have access to hundreds of different small businesses, of which then they create a relationship between the MIIs and the Army, all the services actually, because we can all use them. And so when the Army has a problem and we want to incorporate new IT infrastructure into one of our sites, we'll go to one of these manufacturing innovation institutes and say, this is my challenge. These are the hurdles we're facing, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. And then we can meet with the MII specifically and go to their member events, or they can bring some of those solutions back to us. And so we have lots of opportunities to see various ways in which we can implement this technology into our sites. I find myself reading a lot of white papers and requests for information that we send out into industry and responses to inquiries that we have. And then I have access to this technology. And again, that builds more relationships, right? So on top of the MIIs, as I start to interact with some of these smaller businesses and even in some instances larger businesses, I get a lot of access to emerging projects that they're working on. And so as they're working on something with the Navy, perhaps like they'll bring that to me and say, here's a presentation we did on how we incorporated something into a Navy shipyard. And then maybe I can look at that and see how I can incorporate some of those things into our facilities as well. So the relationship with industry is extremely important and growing. Another opportunity that I have is we go to lots of symposiums and events. The AUSA is coming up, which is one of the largest events that the Army attends in which we have interaction with industry. And so we set up meetings there and meet with some of the larger vendors and have conversations about things that they've just incorporated in general, like different robotics, different automations for things like paint lines or plating lines. And then we can take that back to our facilities and look at them and say, hey, I think this would fit here. We could have lots of savings and remove workers from dangerous situations if we just were able to implement this. And so trade shows, symposiums, things along those lines. So lots and lots of opportunity for interaction with industry.
And if you could go back in time, would you do this all again? Would you follow the same career path, or would you want to change anything?
I would follow the same. It's been absolutely a crazy ride, and I've had lots of opportunity to learn and grow. I think each transition as I moved from installation to lifecycle management command to headquarters has provided me tremendous opportunities, both in the relationships I've been able to build and the people I've been able to meet, as well as the ability to learn things about myself. When I started working at the installation, I never imagined myself managing an enterprise scale initiative at this magnitude. And it's, you grow as a person and you realize what you can and can't handle. The person who started, I don't know if they could have handled the work that I'm doing today, but it also, knowing that I've been able to make that adaptation makes me realize how much more I think I can do going forward. And lucky for me, I have a lot of career left, so I have a lot more opportunities, but I honestly wouldn't change a thing. I've had great leaders helping me to teach me what right looks like and help me to succeed in my career. So it's been really good.
And how big of a role self-reflection and self-work played in your development or even in leadership? Because what some of my guests shared was that even leadership starts with yourself and understanding yourself. Do you agree with that? And what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, I completely agree with it. I think self-awareness is huge and makes for great leaders because when you're a leader, you have a lot of influence over people, and the way in which you carry yourself and the way in which you interact with those people is extremely important. And so I think something to learn is how to understand yourself, as in, how am I going to react under stress? And when do I need to take a time out and remove myself from a situation? Leaders have a lot of responsibility, and a big part of that is self-control and self-awareness, because you can do a lot of good and you can do a lot of bad. And I think the more that you understand how you operate and take time to grow for yourself, to continue to develop, to take leave, right? You can't just work all the time to the point where you're exhausted and you get short and you start not being maybe as positive as you should. You have to give yourself an opportunity to walk away. So I think learning about yourself throughout your journey and how you change, and then learning what you should work on and should change to become a better leader, are an extremely important part of growth as a leader. And so I would agree with everyone who's come on and said self-reflection and self-awareness are important. It's a huge part, I think, for anyone in any portion of their career, but leaders especially.
Do you have advice for young people that you want to share on the show? Maybe someone is listening in their early 20s. Maybe it's even something that you would tell yourself at that age. What would you want to share with them?
I think a couple things. One, it is really important to be authentic. I think a lot of young people look at leaders and think that they have to be a certain way to be a leader, and I think that's untrue. I think people find value in people who are truthful, who are able to deliver things, and who again are self-aware and confident, because people who understand themselves, I think, interact in a more positive way than folks who are unaware, right? You don't know what influence you have on people. You could have negative influence and you don't know. So I think being authentic and being aware of who you are is extremely important. So don't be afraid to be yourself. I think the next thing is that it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to feel uncomfortable. That's growth. That's the opportunities you're looking for. If you find yourself doing the same thing all the time and not really feeling challenged and not going out on a limb, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're really looking to further develop yourself, fear is something that is normal and natural that everyone has. And the best way to get over it is to just jump into things, because as soon as you start doing it, the fear kind of dissipates, right? It's not nearly as bad. But I guess an example is when I came to AMC, the Army Materiel Command, from my previous job, it was very scary for me. Didn't know any of the people, and you were interacting at a much higher level with people that are working in the Pentagon that I had never interacted with before, and professional staff members and congressmen and representatives, and it's intimidating. And so my first couple of months here, I felt like a fish out of water, very uncomfortable, a lot of fear, and I think I hesitated a little bit. And when I started to kind of move into my role more and get more comfortable, it got easier as time went by. But there was a lot of uncertainty and insecurity that went along with that. And so you got to keep pushing forward, and you got to work through it. And I promise that it will go away, especially as you become better at the things that you do. And then I think the last piece is, as we talked about a couple of times, mentors are important, and mentors can be friends, and mentors can be very professional or just somebody that you need to talk to. But you need to find folks who help you be a better you and allow them to influence you, and listen to them. Because if you find someone that you think you want to be like, or that you appreciate how they lead, you have to take in the information that they share with you. It's not just about meeting with that person. It's about walking away with the message that they're trying to give you and incorporating that into how you operate.
And we have a few more minutes left on the show. Usually, I let my guests either give a final message or maybe emphasize on something that they shared, or maybe you have something that we haven't had a chance to talk about. So feel free to use this time to give this final word and share something with the audience.
Yeah, so I think for young folks looking to progress in their career, it's feel free to explore things and don't feel as though you need to reside too long in one place. I think there's a fear that movement to broaden yourself is looked at negatively, but I think that having range is extremely important. Personally, for myself, I have changed roles about every 2 to 3 years, and it's given me a lot of breath. It's allowed me to be aware of a lot of things that happen around me, which influence my decisions, because the more you understand the bigger picture, the better you're going to be able to think strategically. And if you stay in a place too long, there's nothing wrong with being a subject matter expert, but I think it narrows your view a little bit. And the nice thing about moving around and having a bit of range is that maybe you do a couple of things and you realize, hey, I really was happier when I was doing this specific thing. And so you can always go back to it. There's nothing wrong with going back to where you came from. But the nice thing about having range is you wouldn't know how well you were doing something or how much you appreciated it until you experienced something else. And so I encourage people to try to be a little more broad, to look across organizations and experience different things, take developmental opportunities, and don't be afraid to make a switch in your career. There's nothing wrong with changing. You could do something for 10 years and decide that's just not right. I think the more you give yourself the opportunity to grow, the better you are, not just as an individual, but as a leader, because you bring more to the table.
Well, that should do it for the podcast. Thank you a lot, Stephanie, for joining, for sharing your journey and advice and lessons. I truly appreciate it, and a great show. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Danny.